Hello, my name is Kara Catherine White. This project is for capstone, and I did mine in stress in college students due to COVID-19. So this is the agenda of presentation in order. We'll be going over the introduction, background, key terms and search terms, the literature review, which includes the gaps in research, the purpose, aims and objectives, methodology, instrument, and the works cited. So to start, this is my research question. So is there a greater negative impact on mental health caused by COVID-19 protocols between college students that are in class learning or remote learning in the United States? So this topic is important because COVID-19 has impacted everybody, including college students, and they a lot of in-class students transitioned from the in-class learning style to online, and they had to completely flip around what they were used to for learning. And then in the future, and hopefully the near future, a lot of classes that went remote actually are now turning back to going in class. So they're going to have to redo everything that they just got used to for about a year and a half now. And this is a public health issue because the students in college, the community, are having a hard time with the adjustments to COVID-19 protocols and the stress that is affecting their mental health. So some background, 71% of students have indicated an increased stress during the pandemic. Some causes may be that the 91% is they're concerned about their health, the health of the loved ones. 89% have found that there is a loss of concentration and motivation, and 86% had a decrease in social interaction, which has affected them as well. 89% of students who are studying in class said they're experiencing increased stress, and 81% of students who moved online also have experienced increased stress due to the pandemic. So college students around the world have had completely changed their ways and how to continue their courses. Many have turned to remote learning while others are continuing in-class learning. So these are some search terms that I use. These are the websites that I mainly focused on, which was CINAHL Complete and PubMed. CINAHL Complete, I mostly found for students that were going online. In PubMed, I was able to find those students who were in class and how they were doing with the COVID-19 and the pandemic and what has changed, but these were the search terms that I used. These are key terms that I was looking for when reading research and articles. If it didn't really have these terms in it, I knew it just wasn't really the research that I was looking for. Just because, it's really important that it has at least some of these aspects in it. I'm trying to have a focus on it. I don't really want to go too broad. Some articles were a little too broad. I only used one or two of those, if anything. But I just think these are really important to have so I can narrow down everything. So the first part of my literature review is negative mental health impacts. So these two quotes that I took were about the in-person and in college aspects of it. So the first one, which was the facing unique challenges to providing in-person instruction. So it talks mostly about the colleges and what the universities are going through. Doesn't really have a strong focus on the college students themselves, but I think it's important that we talk about the colleges as a whole, what they're doing, and even why they are doing it. And for the second one, the 1 in 5 college students experience one or more diagnosable mental disorders in the world, and COVID-19 has affected that. So it's just made it a little bit worse, I guess, overall, and it's just made things a little bit more of a challenge. And in these articles for this subtopic, I really want to focus on the big factors to mental health, which is anxiety, stress, and depression, as well as a few other ones. There are smaller factors that play into these, but this was definitely like the big word factors of them. The second part is COVID-19 protocols. So what the colleges are doing and what people outside of the colleges are doing, what they may have to do for themselves at their own home, which can also affect how they perform academically. So the first one was talking about in colleges and the student gathering and how it increased the rapid spread of COVID-19. And the second one was an interesting study. It was on a simulation. So this is where they took the simulation about doing the best of the best that every college can do with the protocols. and it still just wasn't enough to stop the spread or reduce it enough for it to be safe for students to go back in, which I just thought was very interesting. And in these articles, I really wanted to focus on the big protocols such as mask mandate, social distancing, cleaning procedures, and then anything else that they put on there. So if students, if they're eating in their dorms was a big one, but just a few other procedures. This also can lead into different negative mental health impacts. But it was kind of, I just wanted to separate it because it was a few of the side factors for it. The next one is psychological distress. So this is it's similar to negative mental health impacts, but again, these are like the broken down versions of the anxiety, stress, depression, what is causing it. So the first one was the e-learning crack-up and fear of academic loss. The e-learning crack-up is just about the online learning and what that is doing and how that is causing any psychological distress. And the fear of academic loss is that the students, they fear that they are not learning to the fullest potential that the college can give them because of the COVID-19 lockdown and the protocols they have in place, especially when online. They don't feel like they're getting the same response as they would in class. And then the second part was the changes in coursework delivery. I liked this quote a lot just because it broke even more down from what I was looking for these articles and for this subtopic. So they talked about the unclear instructional parameters, overall loneliness, compromised motivation, sleep disturbances, as well as anxious and depressive symptoms. And again, the anxious and depressive symptoms really does lead into negative mental health, but broken down. So in this, I was looking for lack of motivation, unclear instructions, fear of academic or employment loss, and even catching the virus. So the next one is the universities. These two quotes that I took really showed where I was looking at. So I started with smaller school, like individual school studies that they did. And then I also looked at a really big study that kind of took, that was actually a worldwide study, but they took out the United States just to kind of compare the United States to the rest of the world, which I just thought was very interesting because my research is about the United States. And then my further research will be closer to Massachusetts. But I just thought it was interesting in how we compare ourselves to the world. So the sizes, the mix of size just kind of gives me a bigger view of everything. There was a few issues with these just because some of them were really small and this, the worldwide, it might be a little bit too big. But again, it just gives me a little bit more perspective. So some gaps in research, just like I was talking about the other one, some were too small of a study size and the other ones may have been a little bit too big. So one of the quotes was the 195 large public university in the United States. I believe this was at a Texas school. And they were trying to compare the 195 students to the United States as a whole. And although I think a great comparison study, I just don't think it's enough to use to compare the entire United States. And the some of the bigger ones researched, I only ended up using one article that provided recommendations. So their research wasn't their own. They're going off of other research and they're providing their own recommendations, what they thought was going on, their opinions. Could be a little bit biased, but I thought they did a great job. Also helped me with future references that I found that were very helpful, that were definitely what I needed for this. So I had some good and bad. I just think that recommendations can be kind of tricky, especially if they don't have all the facts down. So definitely some gaps there. So the purpose of the study is to determine if college students are having higher levels of stress and if they're if they are in class or remote learning. Some aims and objectives that I came up with was by May of 2021, we will conduct a survey of 25 students about their stress levels while changing to online learning. By May of 2021, we will conduct a survey to 25 students about what causes the increase of stress for in-class learning. And by May of 2021, we will conduct a survey on 50 college students rating their stress levels in-class or online learning. I talk a little bit more about how I'll achieve this later on with my methodology. So for the sampling plan, what I would like to do is a correlation study, which is two variables compared to a factor. This will mostly find me qualitative data. I might get a little bit of quantitative data just with the survey that I'm using that I'll show in a little bit. So my plan is to use the two variables of online learning and in-class learning, compare them together and see if there is one that has a higher negative health impact than the other, and what the cause is because of that. And my justification is that I'm comparing and contrasting two variables. The research I'll be doing, I'll find out the similarities of those variables and how they're impacted by the factor. So the sampling frame, I would like to do colleges in the United States, but I'd like to also focus more on Massachusetts just because my study won't be that big. My sampling method will be through convenient sampling. I also might use snowballing by asking students that if I give them my survey and if they can spread it out and help me out with that just to get a little bit more out there. And since I am a college student myself, I do have access to other college students, so I can ask around and have them help me out with that. Also, collecting the data, I'd like to reach out by email and text just because of what we're in right now and what we're dealing with. It's really hard to do in person, but if I am able to do in person, I will definitely take advantage of that. And I'd like to have this done by April of 2021. This data will be collected and researched for the common trend among students in different learning environments. So this is what I'll be using for my survey. So this is going to give me a little bit of the quantitative data, maybe by just seeing how many students I get that are in class or online learning. And then also I have a scale in there. There might be a few things that I might change around. I do want to add a few more questions if possible, but I'd like to do a little bit more research in that. And then a lot of my quantitative data is just going to be asking them some short answers, how they feel, and also asking questions such as like, have they felt an increase, decrease? What do they think can be changed to improve their academic performance and other things like that. I like to also put in before the survey an informed consent. So I'd like it to state, by continuing the survey, you are providing your informed consent. This is a student project, and the survey will ask you general questions about your experience as a college student during the pandemic. This will ask questions about your college, their COVID-19 protocols, and the changes in your mental health. Thank you for your participation. And this is just my works cited for everything I used today. And if you have any questions, please let me know.